All right, how's everyone doing? Yet another Tuesday night. I'll tell you, these Tuesdays come awfully quick. So tonight will be a lot of fun. You'll see. We'll be talking to Bobby tonight. Great dude, got a lot of background stuff. So I'm super excited to kind of share his story and all of that stuff with you. Kind of how it all started, the whiskeys, all that good stuff. But let me just say hi to a couple of people. I know there are a few people in early, and people start to jump in as the live notification kicks in. So it looks like Sugar Kitty obviously was in first. How's it going, Roy? Johnny T, Top Dog, good to see you, bud. Sugar Kitty's still in here. So yeah, we'll give people a little chance to jump in here, and we'll have a good time tonight. So tonight the idea is to kind of get a little kind of behind the scenes of what it is that goes on with Blind Barrels, like the barrels, the whiskey, how it all started, where it's going, all of that. We'll have Bobby share all that stuff with you. But, I was very interested because, a lot of us have all done or been part of a blind tasting, and they're always a lot of fun. They allow for great conversation. Do you like this? Do you like that? That's the really fun part of it. There is no right or wrong with any of these. So that's always the most important part, is to have fun with them, and that's what this is really all about. So we'll get a little more information here from Bobby in a second. But yeah, guys, thanks for joining again tonight. Greatly appreciate it. Let's not waste any more time. We'll bring Bobby on right now, and we'll get the old party started. So there he is, the man of the hour. How are you, sir?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing extremely well. Now that we've got some whiskey that I'll have here in front of me. Always love being part of a great blind. There's nothing that I think I enjoy sometimes more than a good blind. So that's one thing I was really excited to kind of do this and really have a good time with it. Have you share about, what all the whiskeys are and things along those lines and all that. But before we dive into that, if you don't mind, maybe just share a little bit about yourself, kind of your background, and kind of how it all started for you.
Oh, sure. No, well, first of all, thanks for having me on. And just so everybody knows, my head really is this large. It's not it's not just a framing thing. I'm a giant human. And, I grew up, I was the son of an inventor, a risk taker, and growing up in that environment. And, my dad, it took him 30 years to become an overnight success. And I saw the pains and the anxiety of what it took to really take a risk firsthand. I don't think a lot of people know what that is until they actually do it. They don't teach you that in business school. So I went to USC on a football scholarship. Pete Carroll's first year was my last year, so I got to start for Pete Carroll. I could tell a million football stories and legendary elements to that. And I was in the business scholars program there, and I was the first player to ever get into film school there. And so when I got out, I did a lot of trying to get films made, and it's really hard to get a movie made. There has to be a little bit of luck to it. It's lightning in a bottle. It's really difficult. And I did test prep to help kids get into college. And eventually founded a company that worked with foster kids throughout Ventura County. I currently have a company with a neuroscientist, and we do neurofeedback and things like that. And so I was able to find another passion while I was pursuing those passions, because you can't be creative and desperate at the same time. And I've been lucky enough to continue to make documentaries and make films. And during the pandemic, it just, when the quarantine hit and everybody, you can only paint so many accent walls. I'm like, I'll put in a bidet now. And now what? Let's put it in the guest bathroom.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
and then idle hands, and I'm just antsy. And my buddy, who's a financial advisor at Merrill Lynch, was doing blind tastings with whiskey, and I'd never done it with whiskey before. I'd only done it with wine. And I, right after the first call, because it was just fun and really just it was my first taste of the whiskey community, of everybody coming in, being supportive, being acceptive. I was a pure novice at that point. What are you tasting? What are your notes? There was no right or wrong. And it was really accepted in that process. And I called him up and I was like, dude, this is a business. And he's like, yeah, okay. And I'm like, nobody's ever done this before. And he's like, yeah, I know. And I'm like, there's got to be a reason why. Either this is like legally there's no way to do it, or maybe it's just complicated. I don't know. So I went down the rabbit hole, and I spent the next 3 months trying to figure it out. An additional 4 months tweaking it until we actually created a business plan that was viable, and raised the money in a week, put in a lot of money myself. Took a year to get all those elements legally into place. And I will give advice if anybody ever wants to talk to an attorney at some point, whether it's like, neighbor cut down your tree or anything like that, or in this case, ABC, alcohol beverage control attorney. You can do a free, usually 1 hour long consultation with any attorney. And so I did 16 of those. Because I was like, maybe this isn't possible. And the first 7 were like, you should just stop. I'm just going to stop you right. They were very short calls. We didn't get to like the 10-minute mark where they were like, you can't do any of the things that you're trying to. I was like, I just want to pour whiskey into bottles and send them out to people that want to be in the club. I'm like, no, you can't do that. I went, okay. And then one attorney said, well, you know what you could do? You could do this, but you can't do that. I went, okay. And I gleaned that information. I went to the next meeting until I put enough pieces together and I found a way to do it. And yes, it is a complicated model. It's not as easy as just pouring stuff into a bottle. There are rules and regulations. Prohibition never really ended. The 3-tier system that exists, the producers, the distillers pass through a distributor to a retailer, which is what we are. And then we have fulfillment partners that gets us into 42 states. And there's a lot of people you have to trust in this process, but I fell in love with the blind tasting. And when we did it, we decided, let's make this really special, and not just the box and everything top shelf, and to make everybody feel like they're part of something special, because it really is. Let's put things in the box that they can't get. Mm-hmm. And I'm not talking like Macallan 25 or something like that. American small businesses. Let's focus on the craft industry that's really exploded in lots of capacities, whether it's, artisanal food and the wine industry and the beer industry. Kind of, we're at the forefront of that. And now we're at the whiskey industry. And we have these renegades that are out there doing weird things, and they're finishing tequila barrels, and sometimes it sucks. And a lot of newer brands aren't great, but some of them are phenomenal. Mm-hmm. And we wanted to showcase these smaller brands and really put a spotlight on American small businesses that are doing it right, because there's only so much shelf space. There's 3,000 independent whiskey distillers in the United States, and there's 200 spots for bottles on the shelves at Total Wine or Bevmo or your biggest liquor store in town. So how can we disrupt that distribution, give people, so the blind tasting component, I think obviously that's a fun component, discovering what you like without the label telling you what you like, right? There's the curation. We're lining up things in diversity with mash makeup, brands you've never heard of, maybe things you've heard of, but you haven't been able to try. Mm-hmm. And I honestly think the best thing is access. So if somebody does like a bottle, they can get a full bottle of it for the same price if you were at the distillery. So I know many of our bottles go for double, and sometimes 2.5 times the amount of money that it takes that we're selling it for, because we're not really trying to make money on bottles that we don't actually. It's more about making our subscribers happy. It's obviously we want to support these distilleries. Hey, if you can go to the distillery and do their food print, go visit them, go support these small American brands. Go find a way, discover, go, everybody's whiskey journeys, everybody's on a different path. Right. And I would say I'm past the novice stage. I wouldn't say I'm a whiskey nerd or a whiskey expert. I couldn't tell you the nuances of the heads and the tails and how the yeast affects I'm not as well versed in that. I know a lot about liquor laws though. So when I do jump into something, I jump into it with full gusto, and I don't sleep until I've solved problems and I get energy behind it.
Well, I'll say one of the things, like just reading kind of some of the information about your company, was it kind of drew me in, because when I first started doing all of this was probably kind of the tail end of 2016, kind of beginning of 2017. My focus was on a lot of like craft distilleries, and there really weren't anybody or other channels doing reviews of, whiskeys that people, either didn't know about, or maybe they were up and coming and they just needed a little bit of traction. I kind of thought back and like, well, that wasn't really the greatest. No one's going to watch a video of a whiskey they don't know anything about. But then I got to thinking, well, this is more than just caring about views. This was something that I was a bit passionate about, from the standpoint of, I love trying things that are different that other people can't get. We can all go buy Four Roses Yellow Late. You can buy Jim Beam. We can all get that. But to find something from, Pacific Northwest or, Wisconsin, where I'm at, or wherever it may be, that was the intriguing part to me, was that, man, there are a lot of people that are not going to have a chance to get this. And by me doing a video, maybe it will expose them, allow people to try something different. So I love that about what you guys were doing. So
That's awesome. And I love that. That's one of the things that I loved about your show. I mean, you're right. A lot of people want to be like, oh, I've got, like, you've got a bunch of old Carter back there, and I see you got a Stag and you got some old Scout. I have a lot of those bottles at home myself, and I love them. And I don't have a closed bottle home at my house, actually, because the whole goal, if I get something, I just got a Stag Junior, I opened it up, I just got the new Booker. Yeah, I'm a bourbon hunter too.
yeah.
But everything that's in our lineup, I pour more of these craft bottles than I do of anything else, because when someone comes over and you pour them something that they haven't heard of and they try it and they go, what's this? Or, especially like you're going to see, we have a rye in our lineup that I'll be curious to see if you can actually tell what the rye actually is. And a lot of people will be like, well, I don't drink rye. I'm not a rye person. I don't like pepper. I don't like spicy. And we got probably, so many bottle orders of this particular bottle. And it's funny because, like, I know the bottle really goes for $70, $75 if you can find it. And we're selling it for the same price at the distillery. So we had tons of people ordering this bottle and messaging us saying, like, I'm a rye fan now. You've opened up my eyes. And that, as Aldous Huxley would say, the doors of perception are open without the LSD, right?
Exactly.
Open our minds to the process of what whiskey can actually be, and it doesn't have to be 12 years older.
Nope.
I think that came from, if you look at scotches, right, where you get these 18, 25 years, scotches aren't aged in new barrels. So I was actually just talking to last night. I was hanging all night with Colby Frey from Frey Ranch, and I was at a tasting with them. We ended up talking all night. We're vibing, and I then went to get a spot to eat. Ran into him again. We just kept talking all night, and he was like, "Yeah, it's going to be a wood chip at the end of the day. Because a new oak, not that you don't want that flavoring, right? But things that can feel like they're always grain forward because they're like, 18 months or 2 or 3 years." There's a lot of things they're doing now, and the way that they're distilling it and using certain types of pot stills where they're really getting out some of the bad stuff, you wouldn't know it at all. And I'll tell you, in our September lineup coming up, we've got a 3-year that tastes like it's 9 or 12. It's just unbelievable.
Interesting. Well, that's a good point, because I think now, like, again, I think even going back to when I was doing this, like, craft was like truly craft. I think some of those guys were still trying to figure out where they were going to go. How are we going to do all this? And the shift has kind of happened, I think, now, where the guys back then that were producing the whiskey, the good whiskey, has now got into that 5, 6, 7 year range. And those guys are really starting to shine. And a lot of them have made a really good name for themselves. But the guys that are starting out now, I think, have had the ability to watch them and probably picked up a lot of, what it is that they're doing, and allowed them to now make better whiskey, so that it's 2 and 3 years old. That's like, wow, this is really a really nice whiskey at 2 or 3 years old.
A lot of them are going about it the right way. Now, yeah, you have younger ones that are growing really fast that are doing commercial sourcing with, Midwest Grain product, MGP out of Indiana. And we don't fault anybody that's a phenomenal master blender. We were kind of talking a little bit before this started. Like, I like Widow Jane. I like New. I like Penelope. I actually like people that know how to blend and put the right things together. But, like, we have somebody in our lineup that he was a marketer and he wanted to get into this, and he didn't just say, I'm going to source it. He took the long route. He made some tequilas and gins and some no-age spirit like vodka to survive while his whiskey was aging. But he went and apprenticed for several years at Dry Fly. You were mentioning the Pacific Northwest, and there's a phenomenal distillery up in the Pacific Northwest called Dry Fly. And he went and he apprenticed there, and he learned all the arts and the techniques, so that he came out the gates with gold. And some of them, that is a learning process. It does take them 10 years to figure out what they're doing. Some of them never figure it out.
That's very true. There are some that just don't figure it out. you know?
So we gotta get the pushback. If you ever message the robot on our site, you're probably gonna get me, okay? And if it's a delay, it's because I'm sleeping. People think we have this team in India, and it's like, it's me, dude. I'm the I've had friends that are like, I'm like, where's the tracking number? And I'm like, it's right here. And they're
Yeah.
like, well, why isn't that more clear? And I'm like, it was in the email that you got it. And they're being kind of rude. And later on, I'm like,
Yeah.
dude, you're kind of rude to our customer service. And they're like, oh, do you get the transcript for that? I'm like, it's me, dude. I'm the
Yeah, I think that's always the funny part is everyone always thinks these companies have got like, either big marketing or big customer service. It's like you kind of get down to like the nuts and bolts of things. It's like, dude, it's me. I'm answering the phones. I'm replying to emails. Like,
it's I'll tell you, and the distillers are the same thing. They got 4 people. They got a manager, they got a guy and they got a salesman, and they got the distiller, and sometimes the owner was one and the same. And yeah, I do have a team of very supportive people and investors and friends, and our whiskey wizards, our spirits guys, we call them. But I'll get a message that's like, well, what are you just putting a bunch of craft in a box because they're paying you to market? It's like, our process actually doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
The only way to end up in our lineup is for it to pass a blind tasting through our crew ourselves. So we don't just have whiskey nerds and whiskey experts. They're really good about listening to everybody. There's somebody in our June lineup that my CFO doesn't really drink whiskey, and he was so loved this one whiskey that he went on a journey to try to find it and he couldn't get it, and it made him want it more. And that definitely swayed us into putting them in our June lineup, and we listened to everybody. So we blind taste everything. Do I have a teaser list of involved distilleries? Well, that's a great question. So if sometimes you'll notice on our Instagram, you'll see us interacting with people. Sometimes we're a little bit more clandestine in terms of not wanting to reveal. We don't want to ruin the experience for people. Everything that we're going to be doing in this lineup is from our March box, and we will be revealing. So you got to stay tuned. We will be revealing all of these samples. And I will say, so if you want to get this as a gift for somebody, and we have a one-off purchase box that isn't a subscription, it is our March box that we're about to do. So either don't ruin it for yourself, get the subscription. If you want to do one, get a quarterly and cancel it, whatever. But if you want to get it as a gift for somebody and they're not watching this show, this gives you a little bit of a tidbit or a little bit of a piece into how we arrive at these things. So why don't we start pouring sample A?
Yeah, awesome. I just want to kind of show everybody. Like, I want to show everybody.
So question.
Yeah, so basically, kind of here's how it comes. So, and I love that it had like a little magnet thing. I was trying to slide it out the side before, and then I'm like, oh, I love magnets when people do things on boxes. So it's
ribbon pull. There's a ribbon pull there.
So I love the magnet. So kudos already to the packaging. So yeah, you guys can see it comes really, really nice box, good weight to it. So there's nothing flimsy or anything like that. Open it up, got the little magnet, and then you get the little kind of tasting card. So for anybody who's going through and is unfamiliar with flavor profiles and all that, you get kind of a nice little guide. And then as you can see right here by my finger, there's a little QR code that you will scan kind of at the end, kind of how I read it. You kind of scan that, and it'll give you basically what it was that was in your flight, correct?
Yep. And I mean, and great, perfect description of it. And I mean, the pandemic did one great thing for us, which is besides the discovery and all this whole thing, you go to restaurants, there's no menus anymore. There's QR codes. So even my dad, who's 74, going to be 75 this year, he knows how to do the QR code. So I'm like, okay, the QR code became accessible rather than having to create more materials and more inserts and things that can get lost, that you can go look this up whenever you want. And really only our members have the ability to buy these bottles. It's not like if you go into our site, if you click on our bottle shop, you can't get the bottles unless you're a member or unless you have a tasting box. We want that exclusivity, that access that we're talking about. And yeah, I mean, making those boxes I know that there's a lot of our competitor. There's one competitor out there that does a really good job with it, and most of them do like a corrugated thing. Yeah. And I wanted to make sure that we are when we're putting these small brands in this in showcasing them, we want it to be top shelf. We want the whole experience to feel special.
Yep.
And yeah, you can take the foam out later and put your weed in there, whatever. The box is. I have a lot of people like going, "This is a nice box. I don't want to throw it away." I'm like, "Well, you get another one in 3 months."
Yeah.
But yeah, there are cool things. Somebody was trying to build a planner out of it. Somebody's using it
Oh,
to organize different. I'm sure there'll be a whole like as we get bigger, there'll be like TikToks and like, what do you do with your Blind Barrels
yeah.
box? And
Yeah.
it's like
People
it's
are
that
that's one thing when they get nice packages and stuff like this, they never want to like throw away the packaging or anything like that. It's kind of, I even fall into the trap sometimes with certain bottles where I'm like, maybe I can do some of this. And then my wife's like, what the hell are you going to do with that bottle? I'm like, you're right. I'm not going to do anything. I just throw it away. I'm like, whatever. It is what it is.
It's
So
funny you say that because one of the processes where I can't get into some of the proprietary elements of how these
yeah.
bottles get filled and the legal elements of what we have to do. But one of them, instead of them getting filled, there was full bottles that were sent. So there was like 75 of these full bottles, and I'm like, oh my god, what do we? Obviously, you can recycle them, but I'm like, let's make a. What if we made a whole table out of this thing? What if we made a table out of just
Oh.
these bottles? And I have a guy that's like in our group that's a mastermind that can do that. But I'm like going, that's gonna be the heaviest. It's gonna be like, it's gonna be like
Yeah, it sounds like a good idea until you have to have 100 like empty glass bottles all over. You have to try to lift the damn thing. So.
yeah. I was trying to think of how we're gonna make it work, and I was like, what if we turn it into like the Game of Thrones, but it's
Yeah.
whiskey, and we get all these bottles, and yeah, we just can never. The Booker's box,
Oh
Roy,
yeah, that's
dude,
it.
you can't get rid of them. Although did they change like the slide? Like when I was at Costco recently, like my plastic slide I feel like it's gotten cheaper over the years, but the wooden part of it,
probably has.
it still is just it looks dope on the shelf. And there's like I do the same thing with Boss Hog, like that like they almost have that coffin shaped box,
Yep.
and I literally just make sure that there's like a thimble left in the so I'm not just putting an empty bottle on my shelf. Then I'm
Yeah.
like, the box is so cool. I want to keep the box around.
Yeah.
But
Well, it's valid. Like if you've got just like a small drop of whiskey left in the bottle, you can't throw it away because I still have whiskey in the bottle. So I still need my box to be around. So
I
get it.
know, and I do
know.
save it for like special. Yeah, I do share whiskey for non-special occasions. I think that's one of the things that people they
Yeah.
get a little tight with their whiskey, and it's like, no, dude. Like, if you have a friend or a family member, like all we have right now is right now. Like what
Yep.
we're doing right now, what we're doing. There's a mindfulness component to tasting that I think is really cool. That and whether anyone practices mindfulness or not or meditate, being present, being connected to your, the aroma and the look. I
Mhm.
mean, you're using all your senses and being connected to the moment. I think there's something that's really cool about that. But it's also when you're sharing whiskey too, that when you're having when you want to strengthen a relationship with somebody and you pour them something nice, and this can be done with wine. This obviously is done with food when you take somebody out to a nice restaurant or anything like that. But when you're own home and you pour a nice bottle, there is that reciprocity. There is that appreciation that comes into play. And I think that's pretty cool too.
Yeah, it's very, and that's one thing for me, like whiskey, it's such a personal, I mean, it's of course subjective, but there's something that's very personal, but the sharing aspect of it is another thing where, I think I take more pleasure in like watching other people enjoy things than I do. I mean, I get to taste a lot of whiskey like you do. So even though the people may be more into whiskey than I am, I enjoy watching and listening to them and how they enjoy a particular whiskey. So that's a cool thing for me as well. So, but hey, I wanted to ask you, what was it that kind of got you into whiskey? Like, what was it that kind of either your first bottle, or what was it that kind of drew you to whiskey?
I mean, I was I was always a whiskey fan, but I was a drinker. I wasn't really a taster.
Yeah.
Right. So, but and with tequila too. I mean, I really got into tequila more before I actually got into whiskey. When I was at the bar with a buddy and he ordered these really nice. I forget what it was, but it was a killer pour of tequila, and I came up and I knew what it was, and I took the time to acknowledge, share it, and the other two buddies came up and they're like, tequila. And I'm like, bro,
Yeah.
$50. Okay. And so that there wasn't the appreciation there. So
Yeah.
it kind of started with tequila, but it was those blind tastings where I never really thought about the nuances. Like I have a brother-in-law actually that I remember when he heard about the company, he was like, well, don't all whiskeys taste the same? And he's and he's seriously like he now admits he's completely wrong about that. And I'm
Yeah.
like, dude, I can pour 200 whiskeys that don't taste anything like. In fact, everything in our lineup is completely different. But it really was my buddy introduced me to the blind tasting and that concept of me. Oh, this guy's mentioned bourbon and cigars.
Yeah.
What a great mention. That to me, the cigar is the perfect just life metaphor, and whiskey too. Like I can be on the same glass for a couple hours, and what I do when I come home
For me, and sorry to interrupt you, but for me, the nice part about it is the whiskey and cigar that forces you to slow down. You can't speed that process up. I know you were talking about meditation and all of that. You have no choice but to slow everything down doing that.
Oh yeah, and I do have an awesome cigar box and like Pravada. If anyone's ever in a cigar club, Pravada is just the shit. It's just like it's the best. They're the cigar version of what we do. It's all these craft cigars that you can't get, and then I have some premiums. I got some Opus X's and I share them with buddies. But yeah, a cigar itself it's not meant to be chain smoked. It's meant to enjoy it, and it's coupled and it's shared and I usually like every Friday when I come home, and my wife wants me to do something, I'm like, give me 20 minutes.
Yep.
Because I'm going to go sit on my back porch.
Yep.
I'm going to put on some music. I might have a cigar. I'm definitely going to have whiskey, and I want to watch my kids play for the next 20 minutes.
Yep.
And it's a reminder to be present in the moment. And we do get in this habit of worrying. I mean, I'm in a perpetual state of worry all the time with the startup. I do wake up at 4 a.m. consistently, worrying about the various elements that it takes to make this whole company work. But I'm constantly reminded and pulled back into, I love that was the whiskey ritual being tangible. There is a ritual to it. There's the popping of the bottle, there's the pour, there's the smell. I mean, I'll sometimes smell a whiskey for 20 minutes before I'm actually drinking it because I'm just really connected to the moment. But it is this reminder, especially when I have my kids in front of me, that these are all moments that are fleeting, and I think everybody's so concerned about mistakes they've made, that ruminance that takes place. You ruminate over mistakes, or we worry about what hasn't happened yet, and we're missing out while we're in the moment. And whiskeys is dope. I try to do a whiskey mindfulness post on our it's what I'm starting to try to do, a mindfulness Monday where we're just delving into like, okay, what's your connection to the moment.
Yeah, it's cool. So I gotta say I'm a cigar club guy. I know there's a lot of Pravada guys out there. I'm a cigar club guy. Not that it matters. The whole point was just the cigars and taking your time and being very present and in the moment. That's the most important.
Are you a subscriber of Cigar Club?
Yeah, I do some
They're
things.
dope.
Yeah, I do some things with them. And they're
awesome.
They're all great guys.
Is it Jeff or Jason? Who's the guy that?
Yeah, so Jeff is kind of like the main guy. Then you've got
the main dude.
Yep. Then you've got Griff and
Oh no, I've done Zooms with them, and we've been trying to create an affiliate partnership. But I mentioned Pravada because I kind of stole some things from their subscription that we do.
That's okay.
And Brian Descend, who does that, and I know they're kind of competing things, but I'm fans of some of our competitors too.
That's the thing. Like I think that's in the whiskey and in the whiskey and cigar community, like that word, competitors is very loose. It seems like these guys just they're not gonna walk by each other and then it'll be like a knife fight or something. Like these guys are like, hey, let's smoke a cigar and have a whiskey and just shoot the shit and have a good old time. So I don't know. That's one thing I love about both of those industries is that it's just very, man, in the moment and just taking it all in, But anyway.
Yeah, and these craft distillers, when you talk to them and you tell them about who's in our lineup, there isn't a lot of animosity or jealousy. They do support each other. Before MGP came in and played that role, a lot of these distillers were helping out other distillers that needed product because they couldn't meet the demand. And
Yeah.
so it's always been that way, even in the
Yep.
boom of the late 1800s, when these small towns were
Yep.
sourced, a town would run out of it, or they'd have a fire, or they'd run out of it, and one community would help out another community. So it goes back a long way. It's a very American concept.
Well, no, other thing I was going to say, like regarding the samples, like I like the idea of like, because we get it just kind of, well, I shouldn't say running a whiskey club, but you get it from the standpoint of like when someone really likes something, the next question is, well, where can I buy a bottle? And if you're like, well, you're kind of shit out of luck, that's never a great answer to have to give someone. So at least the opportunity for people, if they enjoy something, to be able to secure a bottle from you guys, that's a really nice option.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, earlier we were talking about age statement. So our June lineup, like if somebody does join our quarterly or annual and you want to get the June box, we got about 20 left. We always have a little extra in case somebody wants to have their first box be June rather than wait till September.
Yeah.
And we have a 15-year rye that's matured in a Weller barrel. And it's a barrel pick, and it will never exist again. It's a one-off. And this distillery in particular, they're kind of like the craftier version of barrel, where they're doing barrel finishes, but they're doing even long form maturing in wet barrels. And I mean, I got to tell you, like, people went nuts over this bottle, and we only had so many cases of it, and it went fast. So I did put a note in the box, and I have a little bit held back in case new people come in with the bottle. I said, look, this is going to go fast. So don't wait 6 weeks. I'm not trying to create some FOMO. Like, this is literally people are gonna glom onto this thing because it's a rarity. And I mean, and it's $100 bottle because that's what it would be at the distillery. I'm sure secondary this could go for 2 or 2.5 times that. I mean, when do you see a 15-year anything for $100? You just don't.
Yeah, you don't. I'd say anybody selling 15-year-old whiskey, I mean, really now, like a lot of the older whiskey that you're seeing, in all honesty, you're starting to see Canadian whiskey with some higher ages and all of that. And that's fine. And that's great whiskey. Like that's, and what they do and how they blend Canadian whiskey and all that. I mean, that's a whole other thing. But
their ryes are pretty bomb.
They've got some great things. So, all right, I'm gonna start kind of nosing some of it. This is a very, for me, like it brings me back to like the very beginning. This is a very, like I'll say for a craft whiskey, there's that grain presence. There's like almost like a terroir of wherever that comes from, but it's the newer distillate nuance that you get. You pull some of that stuff. There's that confectionery note.
Yeah, it was tough to kind of figure out not just what we were gonna put in the lineup, but then what order do we put them in? And sometimes it's like, okay, do we want to go by proof level? Do we want to get 2 bourbons in a row? If they're very different, then it's fine. So there's a lot of, that's probably the biggest debate that takes place, because we usually are all very similar in what we think is great whiskey, and collectively, most people like everything in our lineup and they fall in love with 1 or 2 brands. This one is a brand that we all liked, and they kind of came in a little bit late because we were talking to another one and we found out about them later. And they just had a cool story. And I do get influenced by good people. When you're talking to good small business owners, that does influence me. And my whiskey wizards are more like objective. They'll just, and I'm like, I talked to this guy for 3 hours. He's awesome. And like, but the whiskey is just okay. In this case, we liked him and we really liked the whiskey too. But what are you guessing if you had to say the mash bill?
Well,
would you say it's more towards?
So here's what I'd say. So there's a really nice spice element. I don't think it's like overly high in proof. I would, if I was guessing, I would say this is probably on the maybe slightly higher rye side of things from a mash bill standpoint. But again, very traditional, nice vanillas, nice caramels, great great spice on it. Really nice finish, oily. I don't know what the age is. I mean, just based on the profile, I would guess it's not, obviously overly, aged, but I would say possibly a younger whiskey, there's some nice backbone to it. There's some really nice, I like the spice factor to it already. Nice kind of medium light oak that's there, but that baking spice is really nice on it.
Yeah, you're picking up on there's kind of a cinnamon element to it,
Mhm.
especially on the nose. And I'm actually pulling up because I'm not able to screen share, and I haven't memorized every tasting note within the whole thing. And they're actually blending 1, 2, and 3 year aged barrels, so they're
Okay.
doing in-house blending of their own aged barrels, and
Okay.
I think that's where you're getting kind of a little bit more complexity in the nuances that come into it.
Yeah.
But we figured this was a good starting point. And I mean, do you want me to just kind of reveal as we go through it?
Yeah. If you want to do that, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah,
I
no,
would,
no
yeah,
problem.
that's fine.
I mean, like once again, if I will say, if you guys are ever in the towns of wherever these distilleries are, go check them out. They got food pairings. Usually the owners like
I,
hanging
I, I
out.
almost I almost feel like I want to guess, but I don't.
Take a guess. Do it. Hey,
Man, it,
only one person's ever actually named a brand, and it blew my mind. And it was like, and it was, of course, it was right. It was, I think, it was one of the first ever interviews we did, and it wasn't with this lineup. It was a totally separate one-off lineup that we did, and it was only because he did a barrel pick of it, like literally the week before. It was the only reason. But I was like, the hell's happening here? He didn't tasting notes. I thought he cheated at first, but then I realized all his other guesses were completely off the mark. But go ahead and guess.
the only thing, I mean, I would have to have such a frame of reference for, like, I mean, God, there's so many of them. I mean, it's going to be
I'll
impossible
give you a
to even.
state. It's in Colorado, and it's not Breckenridge. It's not 291. I think that's where a lot of people would think initially when they think Colorado, which I actually love both those brands too.
All right, so I don't think it's anything that's got like any kind of like crazy like wood finish. I don't think it's anything like that, of course.
Yeah, the Aspen Staves.
Yeah, I don't think it's any Aspen Stave stuff. Man.
And look, I'd be surprised. Like usually, most people haven't heard of all of or some of these, and they're in Vail, Colorado, and it's don't embarrass yourself, Scotty.
Yeah.
Don't embarrass. Hey, no, dude. Hey, give them credit for taking the effort. Yeah, if somebody can name the brand, I think if you can just name the mash bill, that's enough. But this one is a bourbon, and it is 75% corn, 21% rye. It's heavier
Okay.
on the rye,
Mhm.
4% barley, and this is 10th Mountain, Rocky Mountain crafted bourbon out of 10th Mountain Distillery.
Okay, so the 10th Mountain, that's the veteran company.
Yeah,
right?
10th Mountain. It's named after the 10th Mountain Division, which one of the most utilized military parts of our divisions in our military that used a lot. I guess I always think of like a Bond movie where they're like somebody's on a snowboard or they're skiing and they're killing people, but it's the Mountain Division. But a lot of these guys went on to settle in Colorado and become ski instructors and work on the mountain at the different resorts because of their backdrop. And I never, Ryan Thompson, the owner, who's a good buddy now, I never got into the full backstory of that, but once again, it's kind of that part of it's the less divisive element of, I think we all want to support our troops, whether you agree with the war or whatever it is, we all want to support them. So we were big fans of what they were doing. Really cool bottle. I forget what it retails for. I think it's about like $65 as a bottle, but we enjoyed it. We kind of wanted to start with a bourbon because we just know, I mean, your show's the bourbon journey, but you're not just drinking bourbons. It's this, right?
Yeah.
It's the sexier of the, like, is that a wheated barley? It's a bourbon.
I always like the idea, especially in blinds, challenging people, getting them outside of a comfort zone, or them all thinking that they're all one particular kind of whiskey. Like, I love that whole, like, throw the kind of gamut at people, let them kind of, figure it out for themselves,
Oh, absolutely. And look, yeah, we did have a lot of people that fell in love with this, and it's interesting. We do blind tastings, sometimes there's one. We have one in the lineup that like a few people like hated, but then some people are like, "This is the best thing I've ever had." So
Yeah.
there is this element. It is what your tastes are. Let your taste tell you what you like.
Yeah.
And if you like it, and I do think that if you go through that process, yeah, you're more likely to probably become a fan of that brand rather than. I mean, I've bought a bottle before, whether it's
Mhm.
wine or I remember I got this bottle of Opus One and I left it in the car for like a day, and
Oh,
I ruined it, right? And there's no going back. You can't unruin the wine. But I was
no.
like, it might be okay. And we had guests over. My wife was pouring it. I was like, I don't know about. And everyone was like, just needs to open up. And I'm like, I decanted it for like 28 hours. I'm pretty sure it's like,
Pretty sure
like
it's ruler. I'm
trying to
pretty sure
fuck
this is
that
what
up.
I got.
Like I
Yeah.
just, but we've had an Opus One will probably be good depending on the year, or even Camus, right? There's years that they're off, right? But uh, I've bought the bottle of whiskey that somebody told me about, and then I didn't like it. Um,
Oh yeah.
there's a great spot. Yeah, determining what you like, your taste. There's this great spot in Santa Margarita called Great American Craft Spirits. If anyone's ever in Santa Margarita, you have to. It's like Disneyland for whiskey lovers
Yeah.
because it's the best craft stuff. And they're one of our fulfillment partners, and just great people. And they've got a bar in the liquor store, so you can try everything before you buy it. I mean, it's the way that I wish every liquor store
Mhm.
operated, that they had a bottle open behind the bar of everything, so I could just decide if I want to actually buy this and take it home. And that's kind of what this is. Someone might say, "Oh, well, I'm spending $50 for 4 doubles," because that's about what it is on a per quarterly shipment. And I'm
Yeah.
like, dude, you just spent $36 on a double of Blanton's. Like, I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Like, and these are all better than that. So I don't really know what the disconnect is there.
Yeah.
I mean, right now, like you got enough that you could easily share with two people. I think
Oh
it's
yeah.
better. We've got a lot of couples that are doing this right now, and it's interesting because they didn't know. This happened a few times. They didn't know that their wife liked whiskey, or the wife
Oh,
themselves didn't actually know that they like whiskey.
yep.
And now it's become this communal event that they're doing every 3 months, and they're getting closer
Fun.
through it.
Yeah, it's
And
it's
that's
fun. I mean, that's that. I mean, I eventually wore my wife down. I mean, a lot of it had to be with going to Kentucky and her getting in that environment, but just the me tasting a lot of these things and me always wanting to try something and then have her try it. It kind of, I think it allowed her to really start to kind of get a really good idea of why it was that I enjoyed it so much, and now she really enjoys it, which is really really nice. So,
yeah.
man,
My wife's not on the whiskey train.
He's not. Oh, that's okay. That's okay. There's nothing
Well, there's
nothing
nothing
wrong
I
with
can
that.
do about it. Tequila, I'll get it. What were you going to say about that?
No, I would say there's a nice, like the finish part of it is nice. It's got a nice like little pepper to it on this one.
Mm. So I'll read just for you a little bit of some of the aroma notes, or vanilla, honey, cinnamon. So you picked up on that. The
Yeah.
tasty notes. So some of the tasty notes we come up with, and what we have to do is send that to the distillery and make sure
Yeah.
they agree with us. And some of them just say
Oh,
whatever you did, and others are go, well, you think it's really this, and we go, okay.
yeah.
Um, the finish, yeah, the oak spice I think is really
Yep.
what comes through
Yeah.
on the end there. There is the vanilla. It's not a long finish, but it is something.
It's a great. Again, I'll say it's a nice spice that lingers. I think that spice on this allows for the finish to feel longer. Like that spice really remains. I mean, it's not like overly viscous or overly oily, but the spice factor really remains. It's nice, that nice little pepper with the sweetness. And again, I think a lot of the sweetness just comes from the distillate, the grain forward, the sweetness of the mash. I mean, that's
Mhm.
what you're getting in a lot of this. So you do get those, vanillas and the caramels and all those traditional kind of bourbon notes. But I would even say there's even like a little bit of like maybe like a green apple or some kind of
Mm.
apple, some little apple that's there. And I guess shifting away from apple because I've been accused of combining apple and then quickly saying citrus, and then people are like, an apple's not a citrus. I'm like,
I'm
I get it.
I'm like bad sometimes where I'm like, somebody, is that candied marzipan? I'm like,
Mm.
what's candied marzipan? Like I I usually think of memories, and then I can pull from that memory a flavor or a note or something that's linked to it. Where I'm like, I saw I was in the last tasting with a buddy. He's like, "What does this remind you of?" I'm like, "It reminds me of the time I got to second base in 8th grade." And he's like,
Yeah.
"What?" I'm like, "Well,
Yeah.
we went to the movies, we went for ice cream." He's like, "Waffle cone." I went, "Waffle cone." It was the ice cream joint, but I couldn't pick up on
Yeah.
the nuances of whatever it was. And yeah, I think their finish is solid, and I think you pick up on a great point that a lot of people think it's the burn, that you got to have a long finish because of the burn, that you got to
No,
have this high ABV going on in order for there
no,
to actually be a finish, and that's not true.
no.
So we have what's called in the whiskey world the proof whores. Sorry if that's
Yeah.
non PC, but that's what people call them.
Oh, yeah.
Uh, but there's that element where you people want that high proof. And yes, we do have some in our June lineup. We had 2 barrel proof cast strengths. Um, I've got a case in here that I kind of held back because when it was being bottled, some of it had the char still left
Mhm,
in it.
mhm.
And I think that's fucking cool.
Oh, yeah.
But I know that there's a lot of novices that are gonna be like, "There's a bug in my thing," and I'm like, "That's the coolest part of the sample." But okay. So we kind of
I mean, the whiskey nerd people, like, if you pick up a bottle and it's got barrel char in it, they're like, "That's awesome." Like,
it's
like, I mean,
dope. Yeah,
that's awesome.
it's yeah. So I have a whole box of just one of these that I had to. I wrote on the box remnants because like just to let people know that yeah, there's char in there. And we're doing it. We do have a lot of companies that do tastings, for their clients or for their actual employees and things like that. And that's just a great chance for our whiskey wizards to kind of shine and educate, talk about whiskey history, talk about the nuances of just all the different proof stitutes.
Yeah.
Oh my god, that's a good one.
Yeah. No, that's nice. And I think at times people will confuse the spice with proof. So you got to be careful. Just because it's spicy doesn't necessarily mean it's high proof. I mean, I don't think so far any of these are super high proof. I mean, they feel like, maybe in that 100 proof, maybe 95-ish range, somewhere like that,
Yeah, I think this first one was 92. If I remember, yeah, this
Yeah.
first one was 92,
Yeah.
and we were a little different. One of the things that if you do have a barrel proof, you do have, or let's just say we get a light whiskey or a hazmat, we get like a
Mhm.
142 proof. You
Yeah.
kind of have to put it last because it's just going to kill the rest of the experience. You do want to build up to that. We do tell people like I put an insert in like, yeah, we had 115 and 128 proof in our June lineup. And
Mm.
the funny thing is the 128 proof was so because it was matured in a Weller barrel, something happened to it where it was so dangerously easy to drink.
Mm.
Um, but if you proofed it down a little bit, and I don't mean like put a full ice cube in there, I mean drop a little bit or a small ice cube, whatever it is. Yeah, I mean the flavors really open up. But novices will be like, "This tastes like alcohol," and I'm like, "What is alcohol?" But like
Yeah.
the gasoline, like they feel like it burns too much,
Yeah.
and it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, look, either you like the burn or you don't. If you don't like the burn, the whole point is to proof it down. Like you can always, because for everyone that's watching, generally whiskey is proofed down. They add water, and even the water is a component of the location of the water and where it comes in. It adds to the flavor depending on the minerals in the water and the source of the water and all these different things and how they're proofing it down. It can really add to the flavor.
Yeah.
And thank you for saying we're doing some cool kits. I hope that's one of our subscribers out there. Oh, the Mash and the Drum. And yeah, I mean, look, we're trying to build a whiskey. We're going to be doing some live tastings coming up too.
Okay.
So where we can bring
Good
in
idea.
everybody to meet our whiskey wizards, meet us. We're really as accessible as possible. We had one shipment in June that didn't go out. It went out, but you got hundreds of shipments going out, and one of them got damaged in the process, so it ended up coming back. And it was a Friday night. This was about a month ago,
Mhm.
and I was sitting home. The kids were late. I'm kind of a night owl, and he messaged the robot and our support email at the same time, like, "Where's my box? The box tracking says it's this and this." So I just called the guy up at like 11:40 at night, and how's this for customer service?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I called the guy and I was like, "Hey, we're sorry. This is what happened. I was actually tracking his package too because I didn't know what was happening with it. I was aware of the problem, and he was just a good dude. I kind of told him the backstory, some of the stuff we've talked about, and it was just a good moment to be like, look, we're not this faceless company.
Yeah.
That's just trying to, we're trying to grow. Yeah, we don't have salaries at our company. We literally, everything in our company is built to grow. Stagnation in most companies, and this is kind of that business side of it. If you're paying your mortgage with your business, and that's why you can't get the technology or the other things that are going to take some of the labor out, or just the fact that you have more demand for your product. And if you can't meet that demand because of that, and that's how most companies are, we decided that we did this. We were going to build a brand and an experience, and that was going to be our focus.
Yeah.
And anyone you message our if you message support at Blind Barrels, I'm going to get back to you the same day.
Yeah.
We can jump on the phone. I don't care. I don't sleep a lot, and that's not like a brag. That's just sometimes I have kids. You kind of get trained to sleep less, right? It just is what it is. So I'm happy to. I don't feel like even this doesn't feel like work to me. I love being able to introduce and showcase these brands.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. I mean, I love the whole concept, and I mean, I know people have been doing them on their own for a long time, but I mean, it's a great concept to be able to get to people, let them try something that's a little bit more structured and all that. Did we ever mention what 2 was? I've already moved on to 3 a little bit, but did we?
Okay, let's talk about 2. Tell me what you think about B.
Geez, I've got to go. I already moved on to C, for crying out loud. I'll tell you one thing I will tell you is, and I think what I was describing before was B, not A anymore, but B. I thought still was, the vanillas, the caramels, but it had a little bit of that kind of green apple. There was like a nice brightness that was there to it. Still had a really nice spice. I thought the finish was nice, little peppery on the back end on 2, but I thought overall it was. What I will say is, as I've moved up, I've liked each one now consecutively better. So, which is, I think, a good credit to you guys in structuring how this thing is kind of working. So
it's interesting. Sample B was something in our lineup that it's the only time that I foisted somebody into our lineup where I know the owner of this distillery. My dad lives in the same town where this distillery is, and I loved their product, but we had to beta test everything that went into. There's a very just nuanced and intricate process to get other people's whiskey in our bottles with our brand on it. It's not this easy process. There's a lot of steps to it, and to get all the costs and the calculations to figure out how we can do that in terms of pricing and all this other stuff. It's difficult, like to just figure out like what price is right. I don't want to feel like we're, that we're basically fleecing these small brands, but at the same time, I know what the price is going to be, and we can't pay more than retail by the time it lands at us. But then we're charging an element of retail, and so this brand. So this is actually, I don't know if you can take another sip of B just real quick to just see if you can tell or just get a hint. I will give you a hint and say that this is a really hard grain to do, and it's 100% of this grain. And this is a summer sipper all day. This was probably, I was glad that I foisted on the Whiskey Wizards because this was really popular in the lineup, and people have discovered this brand. They're growing. They're winning massive awards.
Man, I mean, that's not a rye.
It's not a rye. And we just did a bourbon.
And it's 100, and that's 100% grain of something that's not corn or rye.
100%. So that leaves you with 2 left. Is it wheat or is it barley?
Well, I wouldn't say. Well,
that's my herbal
Well,
sugar.
I would definitely say wheat. This isn't 100% barley.
This is 100% wheat.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
100% wheat. It's one of the hardest. You know, if anyone knows anything about distilling, usually you do put barley in the mix somewhere because it helps convert starches into sugars.
Yeah.
It helps that process because it liquefies. Um, so this is a brand in San Clemente, California, Southern California. That's where my parents live, and this is Drift Distillery. And Drift, this was the guy. He went to Dry
Really?
Fly. He apprenticed at Dry Fly, came down, invested a lot of time and energy into his company, and it is paying off. They are making some rise. They're doing some really cool stuff, but they have a family farm in Kansas. They source all of their grain from their family farm. So Drift gets to go back and actually source all this. It's very rare that you actually find true grain to glass. Usually they're from farmers or they're local. They're sourcing locally, but very
Yeah.
rarely do you have either the farmer themselves making the grain a true
Yeah.
ground to glass operation.
Yeah.
And
It's definitely softer. And I think if I'm not mistaken, like they have like maybe like more like kind of decorative bottles a little bit. I mean, I think they've got, is it like a fly fish or something like on like a fly from fishing? Is
are
that
you talking about dry fly or are you talking about drift?
Well, I was thinking of drift, but maybe I'm confusing the two of them.
Drift is I do have a bottle here. I should have
And you
just
said
had all the
they're out of
bottles.
Colorado as well?
No, Drift is in San Clemente, California.
Oh, California. Okay.
And it's a little round bottle. I wouldn't say there's anything crazy special about the bottle. But it's it's really popular in our lineup. And yeah, it's a $50 bottle if you're at the
Yeah.
distillery, and so we sell it for the same thing. We've had a lot of people out of state that have been trying to source it, and there's been people that have been trying to find a workaround for people that aren't subscribers to actually get the bottle orders going through. And the workaround is basically our subscribers are ordering it for friends and then sending it to their friends.
Yeah.
So that's the workaround. But once again, I can't say enough how the access to getting these bottles it's most people that are in our club stay in our club so far.
Yeah.
The people that have left have been like my family that don't drink whiskey but supported the
Mhm.
it's like, thanks Aunt Jeanette for 1 quarter, but I don't drink whiskey at all. You gave it to your neighbor's son or something.
Yeah.
But I honestly think that that's the coolest thing, and we don't really market that or anything. I think it's something, and not that like I have to buy a bottle every time, but no, you have the option to do it, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. No, that's nice. I think moving on to like 3, this is much more traditional, probably a little more age on this one. This is
Yeah, what are you feeling about C?
I mean, coming off of 1 and 2, I mean, now 3 is much more of that kind of traditional like bourbon profile. You know, there's those nice kind of like honeys and caramels and nice oak that's there, but it's much more of that, you know, what you think of as that tried and true kind of bourbon flavor profile.
This was massively popular.
I can see. I
and
can see. I mean, this is what I would say about this whiskey is whatever this is, it's very like crushable. Like it's very easy to drink. It's got a nice flavor profile. What
it's
I
really
would,
complex, I think. I think like especially if you leave this in the glass for a while and you drink it a little bit later, this thing changes. It evolves a little bit, and it's almost like you're like Willy Wonka, where they're like, what is it, the everlasting gobstopper? Where it's like, oh, I'm tasting lemon now, and then now it's
yeah,
blueberry, and now it's the schnozberries taste like
yeah,
schnozberries. But
yeah,
that there's this weird thing where there's this evolution within the actual flavor itself.
yeah.
And it's super complex, it's super tasty, and it's interesting that you say bourbon because it's actually a rye. And this is not
This is a rye. This is a rye whiskey.
this is a sneaky rye. And this was the one that I was telling you about that people tasted this and that we converted bourbon drinkers to rye drinkers because not every rye is spicy. This isn't this spicy. You're not getting your traditional peppery, overwhelming sense of pepper. And look, I actually love all the grains. I do. But I would say I lean more in the rye direction if I were to just pick out favorites of things that I'm normally pouring. I if I have people over, I pour I'm probably the biggest purchaser of this product like
It's
on the Western Hemisphere because we're the only ones that can get it. So I buy it off of myself all the time. I'm like, well, I get it wholesale, but it's phenomenal. And this is out of what? Keep going. Did you have a question?
is this a 51% rye?
You know what? I can tell you right now. Like I said, I haven't memorized all the percentage. This one is 85%.
Really?
Yep. 10% sweet corn. And I do think the sweet corn does have an element in being a little bit more dominant. It's 85% dark pumpernickel rye. And the pumpernickel,
Really?
for those of you who don't know, the rye, what they do is when they leave the husk on.
Is
And
this
that's
is this is this Midwest?
this is Middle West. Look at you. Yeah. This is Middle West of Columbus, Ohio. And I'll just say this, whoever's watching this right now, if you're ever at a liquor store, because I don't know why they're not as well known as they are, but they should be one of the most well known. They sent us 6 bottles of different things, and I got to
Yeah.
tell you, I loved everything they sent, and completely different too.
It's nice. I can't imagine how anybody would guess this is a rye. Like you don't have a lot of those, like the traditional, maybe like a mint or a dill. And again, maybe the pumpernickel is what's changing that, but it's very like robust. And I don't think they've got a lot of super high age stuff. But and is this what do you know? Is this in smaller barrels?
It's not, but you would think it is the way that it tastes. And we're trying to dispel these. Like I mentioned, yeah, we had a 15-year rye finished, matured in a Weller barrel. Okay, and we do have some big age statements in September. We got some really big ones coming up too, but we're trying to dispel this myth that things have to be. Joshua knows his jam. Yeah, dark was. It actually won one of the Ascot awards for Fred Minnick like 2 months after it was in our lineup, but. The age statement on this is
nice.
3 years old. This is 3 years old, and this isn't grain. Yeah, some things are very grain forward when you get into lower age statements. I think I feel like this tastes like 7 or 8 years. It's just because it's very complex. It's deep. I love it. It's phenomenal. I enjoy this regularly.
That's nice.
What happens is I have a lot of friends that do too, and we have local people in clubs that, they come by because we're technically a liquor store, and so I always have to have this in stock because the demand for it doesn't go away. So just if you get a bottle of this and you find a way to get it that isn't us, do it. I don't. If you can find a cheaper way to get this bottle, love you for it. Support small craft distillers, whether it's through us or not. Like I'm literally, we as a company will make $0 on this because we do flat rate shipping. We do have fulfillment partners that get a piece of this, and we're selling it. So there's not this great margin that exists. And for this particular bottle, it's 0.
That's really well, I can see a nice Maduro. Like I think that would probably
oh man, that's a good
pretty
call,
good.
Josh.
Now those are two.
I've not done that. That's dope.
Like I think that combo is two like similar kind of profiles versus the like working off of like an opposite kind of profile, like a Maduro and this. I think there's enough hardiness to both of them that they would probably be really, really nice.
But don't you love the combinations when you think about what Josh was just saying? You take a Maduro with the Middle West pumpernickel rye. I mean, you have so many options of creating flavor explosions, and and like I'm like, damn you, Josh, I'm gonna buy a Maduro on the way home tonight. I'm gonna get one, and I'm gonna smoke it and while I'm drinking some pumpernickel rye for sure.
I'll see Joshua on Friday. He's a local guy by me, so he's just down in Milwaukee. So he and we're getting together over the weekend and stuff.
Nice.
So.
Did you ever see the movie Joshua? The Sam Rockwell movie is from like 2011-ish or something like that. And it's like the bad seed or the good son or, the evil kid or whatever, the omen, I guess, but the devil's not involved. And this kid is just psychologically, sorry, Joshua, I'm sure you're not like this, but Dave Matthews from Dave Matthews Band like produced it and did the end
Oh,
credit song. The end credit song is like an Easter egg that tells the whole story of like just how fucked up this kid is and
mm.
manipulating his family in really uncomfortable ways. And it's go check it out.
Yeah.
Joshua, Sam Rockwell. There you go. Another
Man,
plug.
I'll tell you what. I mean, coming off of 3 to go to 4, 4 is
Yeah,
like
what are you feeling on that?
I'm trying to figure it out. Like, I don't know if I've had anything that there's something that's there. And again, I don't like, oh man, it's very like kind of like corn dominant or something. It almost comes across as like a light whiskey or like a corn whiskey or something.
You're hitting on. See, look, you the more you drink, the better you get. Uh,
Yeah, there's
you're in
something
the
that,
wheelhouse, and I got to tell you, there's a very, very good chance that either you hadn't heard of this brand or you haven't heard about them until recently.
okay.
This was our diamond in the rough. We aim for this in every lineup that we do. That so you've heard of Middle West, you've heard of 10th Mountain. You probably hadn't heard of Drift, right? Drift is a fairly new,
Yeah.
so and I can tell. I mean, the fact that you've explored craft, this might be a brand that you've never heard of. And we were talking with a distillery that just wouldn't arrive at our price point. It was just going to create bigger problems for
Yeah.
precedent down the line. And we had a local guy named Tony Jones who runs this barrel club. Some of these people that run these not barrel clubs, but bourbon societies or whiskey clubs. I mean, the passion that these guys have is just it's overflowing. Ported pumpernickel or straight rye? What do you see? There's a whiskey nerd right there that's giving me a super whiskey nerd.
Ported.
What is a porter? You mean like is it finished in a porter? You mean is that part of the distillate or straight rye? I mean, I can tell you the percentage of it that's rye. I can tell you that it's 85% dark pumpernickel rye. I don't know if that.
Yeah, that's crazy. Honestly,
but
I mean, honestly, like what that is, like I'm surprised there's not more people who've explored pumpernickel because that's a very nice profile, I would say.
well, and it sounds really cool too, right? It's like, oh, what
Yeah.
is that? A rye? It's a pumpernickel rye.
It
You
sounds
know,
it sounds like one of those things where it honestly it sounds like one of those things because I had this some pumpernickel rye from them when I was in Kentucky at Justin's House of Bourbon. They were there with a bunch of stuff and we were doing some little event down there and they were there and it was the first time I ever had it and they said pumpernickel rye and I'm like what in the hell is this going to be? Like this can't be good, and then I tried it and I was like, well, son of a bitch. I'm like, that really surprised the hell out of me.
I mean, you usually think of it as this pumpernickel rye bread, right? You think of it as
Yeah.
this element, or just same thing with rye. We think of bread, right? And
Mhm.
it's wheated bread, but we don't make that same connotation. But it's just phenomenal. But Sample D, getting back to Sample D, they are in California. I will say that they're in the middle of nowhere in California. There's a lot of those places out here because we got farm country, and this is in the middle of farm country. And
Really?
this is a bourbon, and it's a bourbon mash.
Yeah,
And
so I was gonna say there must be like a high corn or high something in this, I'm guessing.
it is. So it's 70% corn, 25% rye.
Oh,
The age statements, this is only 4 years old. We were actually the first to actually carry this. There's only right now 2 stores that carry this in California besides us, and it's expanding and growing rapidly because this brand is really catching fire. And yeah, I do think bottles of this because of the limited availability of this, because the growing of this brand are going to be worth. Some people I've talked to some of our subscribers are in the subscription from an investment standpoint. That somebody did that. I have this one guy that he orders. He knows he can get a sense from like, this is a rarity. They only have so much of this. Nobody has this. And in 4 years, this is going to be worth 4 times that. And the dude's probably right. So this is in a town called Atwater. It's just north of Merced.
mhm.
And this is Corbin Cash Distillery. Have you heard of Corbin Cash?
Corbin Cash. No, I've not heard of them.
Corbin Cash. So they kind of got well known for doing a rye, and so they have a sweet potato farm. And I got to tell you, if you ever their gins, they have some sweet potato liqueurs that are just off the charts. And
Corbin
there was a guy that they hired on a sales rep
Mhm.
that the guy David Souza, he's the grandchild of Portuguese immigrants,
Mhm.
and but his last name is Souza, right? So it sounds like the tequila. And so when he was the first day, there you go, Corbin Cash Rye, Richie Z
Yeah,
knows.
Richie's a California guy too.
It's called
So
the Merced Rye. I got to tell you, these guys are exactly what Blind Barrels is about. Like these guys are rock stars in 50 miles. Anyone within even 100 miles, people know the best distillery in that area by far is this distillery. But once again, distribution puts this stranglehold, and you got one guy who's the main distributor. You got
Yeah.
another guy that helps. You got a manager, and then you got a salesman, and that's it. I mean, there's 4 people that work at this company, and it is fire. This is 106 proof. It's a sour bourbon mash, and he named it Corbin Cash because the water broke on 2 of his babies on the same day that his still started producing whiskey was
Mhm.
the exact same day and the moment that his wife's water broke on his son. And his son, who's now about 12 years old, he named him Corbin Cash. So he named the distillery after his son and became the namesake because Sauza sounds like the tequila. Sounds
Oh
like
yeah. Yeah.
so there's a cool backstory to this. And
Yeah.
this
Yeah,
was the one that a few people were like, didn't really like it. And you know what's funny? I had a buddy, my best friend actually. He was like, I didn't like Sample D. And he texted me 2 days later. He's like, Sample D is the best thing I've ever tasted. And I was like, are you bipolar? What's happening, dude? Like,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
there's this weird thing. Like sometimes it can be something you ate that day. It can be anything like that. This for some people was one of the best whiskeys that they've ever had.
It's interesting. It's interesting in a very good way. There's a nice sweetness, a great spice. I think the finish is really nice on it. I think it's a good proof, really nice proof. Is 106 barrel proof for them or no?
You know what? It might be because there
Okay.
was I remember we had to kind of use a paper filter on it because there were some barrel remnants that were involved in that. That's a good question. But I do think the finish is one of the cool things about this. Like this is one of these whiskeys that you can drink for a long time and you can proof it. I would even just put like 3 drops of water in it. Just see how it changes. It really opens up. And they source their grain from their neighbor. So like I said, they're a sweet potato farm and almonds.
Interesting.
And they source all their grain from their neighbors. So they're as small town as it gets. These are real farmers. These are real distillers. And they all have great stories. And yeah, they're for being in the middle of nowhere, they're really popular. When people go and visit their distillery, people travel for miles to go and eat their food and do their events. And when COVID shutdown was taking place, they kind of ignited a fire and bringing people back together when things started opening up a little bit.
It's a really nice whiskey. I mean, I think the finish is fantastic. It's sweet, spicy. There's that nice caramel, great, nice little like baking spice that's on it. You can tell it's got a little bit of proof to it. It's pretty viscous. It's nice and oily. I think they're doing a pretty damn good job.
I mean, it's got all the great components of a killer whiskey, and we did this in a blind. So it's funny that you got all that old Carter in the backdrop, because when I did a blind tasting with my whiskey wizards, so we kind of have like 8 people on the panel, and sometimes we actually reach out to subscribers and we send them samples of stuff that aren't in our lineup yet. We want to get feedback from everybody. It's one of the cool things about being in the club. It's not advertised; it's just something that we do. Mm-hmm. And so I created an 8 bottle lineup, 30 milliliters each, and I threw in Old Carter in there just to. because in my mind, I'm like, well, Old Carter's going to dominate this, but let's just see how much it dominates. And it did really well. Old Carter got second place.
Hmm.
This got first place. So,
Really?
so it definitely defied. I had a
Yeah.
$400 bottle against this $100 bottle, and perception sometimes trumps reality, right?
It's pretty nice. I mean, I think how you've laid this out is really interesting. What would also be cool is to see, like, C and D flip flop, to see, like, again, maybe you've gone in proof order. Maybe there's something about that.
We did do that the first time just because we were a little uncertain, and also kind of putting the bourbons farther apart from each other.
Yeah.
And even though it's a bourbon mash, there's not a lot of people doing great bourbon mashes, and this is
Yeah.
one of them. So I do give a lot of free range to the Whiskey Wizards. I don't like to feel like I'm involved in a lot of decision making, but I want them to feel like they have autonomy in this. That this is their baby too.
Yeah, I think it's good. I still enjoy the way you guys did this. I mean, it's challenging for anybody. Like, I think just me going through this was a lot of fun. It all different, completely different, profiles on all of them, which was really fun. And I can see for anybody who's like a little bit of a, let's say, a whiskey novice. I mean, this would take you on a hell of a journey, that's for sure. So
yeah, none of these are anything alike each other, and
no.
And once again, I'll say you'll probably like all of these, and you'll fall in love with one or two of them. And I do have my favorites. Everybody has their different favorites, and yeah, I mean, we had different people. Some people ordered 6 bottles of one thing in each of our lineups, where they're just like, I want a lot of that. And that happens to be what their flavor profile is, and figuring out what actually works for them. We want this to be a unique experience. And look, if you go onto our site, there's a masterclass button at the top of our page at blindbarrels.com, and anybody can do our masterclass for free. Once again, we're fans of whiskey culture. We're fans of whiskey knowledge. If you want to know about the nuances of whiskey history, especially American whiskey history, going through the color and the appearance and the aroma and the taste and the finish and the processes and the 4 stages of tasting, or just what is mash bill, what does it mean, and what are these different things. If you want to learn more about that, everything that I know is from shooting and editing all of that. A lot of it anyways, because you look at the same footage again and again and again. But we make that free for anybody. So we don't just say that's only for our members. We honestly do want people to, wherever you are in your whiskey journey and you want to further it with us, or you just want to run alongside us, or watch some of these things and go blindly buy these bottles elsewhere and go support these brands. I honestly don't care. At the end of the day, we're going to still create amazing lineups. One of the cool things is our lineups go out at the same time every time. So if you sign up now, let's just say, and you message the support line or whatever, and you want to do the June box, we can get the June box now, and your second box will be September. You can do that. You can experience both, so you don't have to wait if you don't want to. But the boxes that go out mid-September, mid-December, mid-March, and mid-June, that lineup never happens again. Okay. And we have probably about 15 different large groups that are friends, their families, their coworkers, they're in different states. And they get to commit to being together every 3 months over some badass whiskey. And that's nice. Why I think, we could have done it, the model, all sorts of ways. Like if we were a keto subscription, we'd just throw a bunch of almonds and cauliflower cheese into the thing. And like everybody, I could just create whatever box I want at any point. But this lineup never happens again. And that's, I think there's an element to that too. Like we want everyone to feel like they're a part of something special.
Can tonight's like winner get this box
if they want, or they can get the June box? And if they want, and then just ask if they want the barrel char in it or not. If they want, but we can get it out either way. Somebody, I think somebody signed up because they already, like, once again, like I said, I'm the robot. And somebody was like, how come I can't access the the bottle order. Like they want to order a bottle right now, and I'm like, all right, well,
Yeah.
well, first of all, once you sign up, what'll happen is every time that you go to the reveal page, you'll be able to buy a bottle through the reveal page, and that's
Oh,
kind of how we keep people that aren't in our
yeah.
exclusive club from just. I mean, is that stupid on our part and not just letting people order bottles willy nilly whenever they want?
Uh,
I guess maybe I don't know. Can we
I,
make
I,
it
I
more?
I like your approach though. I like the approach of the people who are signing up as like the subscription people, that they have the opportunity to truly buy some of these versus the guy who just wants to swoop in, buy a bottle, and then get out. I mean, you're not like a liquor store, you know.
We technically are. I mean,
Okay, well, you
the way our
what I
licenses
mean.
are set
Yeah,
up, but
yeah,
absolutely. So when
yeah,
we initially started, when the bottle shop first came into play, there was a problem with it because there were just bottles that people could order, and we had like dozens of bottles getting ordered every week from people that weren't in our club, and I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. But I'm like, oh, people are blind ordering bottles, which is weird, but
yeah,
they're also getting the same prices that people in our club can get, and I really wanted that to be
yeah,
exclusive to them. So to me, I'm
yeah,
like, I kind of have a problem with that. Even though bottle sales are great and all that, but it was just a little bit weird that people were like, oh well, let's just go right
yeah,
to the bottle shop and order whatever their thing is. Like
yeah,
we are a whiskey experience. We're not really a whiskey brand.
yeah,
In
yeah.
terms of like, are you ordering now down the road? You know what I want to do? It's kind of like what Boss Hog does. I want
Mm,
to create like a blend of like our favorite. Let's just say we take 5 of our favorite whiskeys from the year. We probably can't put it in a malt or especially like a peated or like a smoky malt because it'll
yeah,
dominate it. But
yeah.
do a blend, do a one-off blend,
Mm,
and do a unique limited edition. Maybe only 100, 200 bottles available.
yep.
Just a one-off offering every year, and do this unique blended
Sure.
blind barrels bottle. So that's one of the things I don't think will happen this year, but next year we're hoping to do that and create more just exclusive offerings for
Yeah.
everybody.
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, myself and Jason from the Mash and Drum. So we run a pretty good like whiskey group called Mash and Journey Whiskey Club, and it's kind of. I mean, it's a lot of fun. It's being able to do all these different things and get fun and different unique things to people. I mean, outside of just always the big boys. I mean, we all know those, and people go crazy
Yeah.
over them. But
And I got them too. You got them
yeah,
in your
yeah,
backdrop. I love
yeah,
them.
we do
Nothing
too.
wrong with
So.
that.
All right,
Yeah.
let's do this. Let's do this. So Marty, we're at an hour and 22 minutes, of which I can't imagine like or how an hour and 22 minutes has already gone by. But so that everyone's not on here all night long, why don't we run this thing another 2 or 3 minutes, and then Marty, give me the total. So you guys, let's see, we're at 122, almost 120. So we'll say 125. Let's see, what time will that be? So that'll be 9:25 Eastern. We'll run this thing too. So if anybody wants to get in on the deal, then we'll do the we'll find the total amount of entries tonight. So 1 through 20 as of right now. So if anyone wants to get in the next 2 minutes, get in there, and you guys will be lucky to get either this box or the next month's box. I mean, it'll be up to
Just
you.
tell us
Yeah.
what you want. We'll make it happen. And I will say, look, if you guys want to come in and you guys want to subscribe, I'll give you
Definitely.
a discount code, whether you're entry or not. Like we're once again we're big fans of supporting your show, everybody that's supporting the whiskey community. Not to negate from putting in entries from the moment, but
Yeah.
if you use the code whiskey10 at checkout, you'll get 10% off of. I mean, look, we got cool hats. I got to tell you that the hats are. I got a lot of people buying hats that aren't in our club. We did want to create a cool brand. Like we got some cool T-shirts, we got some tasting glasses. You're using one of them. So any of our merchandise, our one-off boxes, or our quarterly, and even our annual subscription, which is heavily discounted. If you use whiskey 10 at your checkout, you can get 10% off of anything.
All right, so I just put that in there. So anybody who goes in, if you put in whiskey 10, it gets you 10% off your.
And if you signed up before we got to this point and you want to message me or just send our support line a note, I'll send you some dope merch to
Send something to the robot.
just hit the robot up and don't abuse it, because sometimes I get it at 3 in the morning and I feel like I should answer it at 3 in the morning, and I'm like, guys, what do you somebody in
Yeah,
New York?
don't send the robot something at like 3 in the morning. I mean, let the robot sleep a little bit, for crying out loud.
I sometimes get like that 3 a.m. It's like, oh, these whiskeys or these bourbons, and I'm like, all right, well,
3
bourbon,
3 a.m.
whiskey,
You have to give like whiskey education.
yeah, there's which I'm fine to do that, but I'm also it's 3 in the morning, and I'm like,
yeah.
oh, maybe I gotta pee. Whatever, I'll figure it out along the way. There you go, Adam has to come up.
Yeah.
And yeah, we'll get a box out to you guys, and I think what's really important is if you guys join us and you like it, get your friends and your family members to it. This isn't some kind
Definitely.
of ploy. Like, I do really think that sharing this experience, and look, one box is plenty to share between 2 people.
Yeah, because you can see, like, I mean, I had enough already for just myself. I mean, I've still got, half of each little bottle, as you guys can
Yeah,
see.
you got 60% of your bottle left.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a big dude. I'm gonna want a box myself. That's just me. I'm gonna.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, they're easy to. I've seen like you out golfing. I see you can chug these things pretty easily when you're on the links or whatever.
Oh, you saw that? Well, it's funny because that was one that had a remnant in it, and so we have rejects where there's literally like a barrel char that's like in the bottle, and I just know that someone will complain about that, and then I have to send them a whole new box, and it's all So we kind of go, well, so we put it over to the side, and like I'm actually drinking right now from the lineup that we're doing, the rejects that aren't really rejects. I mean, I think our quality control in terms of like our bottles get washed at 180 degrees. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of elements that I think because alcohol will just get rid of anything. It's just at a high enough proof, it'll get rid of anything. But I'm kind of a stickler for following the rules and just doing things the way they're supposed to be done.
Probably a good idea. All right, let's do this. So we've got 30 entries. Why don't you give me a number between 1 and 30, and I'll ask Marty from Whiskey Knows who tonight's winner is. And if you get this bottle, I don't know what the next quarterly one will be, but I'll tell you, like, this is a really fun blind flight to go through. I mean, even as much whiskey as I drink, that Bobby drinks, this is a really fun blind flight. So cheers to you guys for that.
Thank you. I mean, I got to tell you, I feel like every lineup's getting a little bit better and better and better. Luckily. Yeah. So is it randomized? So when someone puts an entry in, are all those entries randomized? Or is it in order?
So what it is? So nobody knows. I mean, whatever number you pick, and then as people do through the super chat part of it, each person gets a particular number. So whatever number you pick, it's already associated, and Marty is running that in the background.
Okay. I just want to feel like I'm like the first entry is number 1, and like number 1 should get it because they're the first one. But then I'm like, so I'm going to pick a prime number. I'm going to pick the smallest prime number where the 2 digits add up to 10, which is the number 19.
Oh, there you go. Number 19. Boy, you're getting very, very analytical here with us, aren't you? I had to think for a second. I was like paying attention. I'm like, where are you going with this? So.
Well, my football number in college was 91, and people would always ask, like, why 91? And you would either have to say Kevin Green, who was a dope ass 91, or I would just say it's the highest 2-digit prime number where the 2 digits add up to 10. So you have 19, 37, 73, and 91, and 19 is the lowest 2-digit prime number that adds up to 10.
Yeah.
So there's not really a reason for it, but it just sounds like there's a reason for you.
All right. So 91. Were you a defensive tackle or defensive end, or?
I was a defensive end. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
And
I was just going by like kind of probably more old school numbers. So when you were playing, those would have been more traditional. Now you can be
you can be number 5. It doesn't. You can be a quarterback. Nobody cares. But
no one gives a shit anymore.
Well, I mean, I think what's unfortunate, somebody will be like, "Oh, you played football in the offensive line." I'm like, "Are you racially profiling me because I'm a large white man that could possibly be a defensive end?" Like, don't do that.
Yeah.
But then some dudes are like, "No, you look a little meaner. You know, the defensive line, you got to be a little bit nasty." when you're coming off of it. But
and I think 91 like traditionally always seemed to be like a defensive end number. They never
a lot
really
of the
threw
times,
you off.
a lot of times the inner tackles, you're getting like 99, and
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, like what's the dude? What's the dude from the Rams? That Darnold. I don't even know.
Aaron Donald.
Is he 98?
I thought he was 99. No, he's not 99, I don't think, but maybe he is 98.
I don't know. I have a jersey
Yeah.
for my daughter works at the school sometimes, but I should know, but I don't. But I did play 3 technique, which is the defensive tackle and nose
Oh,
guard in some games. But in those games, I was honestly 230 pounds, and it was just forces mass times acceleration. I didn't have the mass, so I had to accelerate. Like, talk
yeah.
about like moments where you have to literally come alive to save your life, to jump off, to get off the ball fast so you don't die or
Yeah.
just be embarrassed on national
Well,
television.
and geez, I mean, 230 pounds as a defensive end. I mean, that's a light guy. I mean, that's built more like a linebacker than a defensive
Yeah,
end.
I was a linebacker, but I mean, for some reason, I was playing a lot of interior because it was needed, and we
Yeah.
just had a weird rotation going on. But I was more like 265 when I was a defensive end. You
All right.
know,
So here's a good question for you. This is football related, but so does Pete Carroll really chomp the shit out of the gum the way he does? Does it really look like he is just chewing like there is no tomorrow?
Oh yeah, I mean the thing is he's intense all the time. I'll give you a great Pete Carroll story. Pete Carroll would just show up and he'd have a hoodie. He'd be out on the field before anybody, throwing like 45-yard. He's an athlete, dude. Like,
Yeah.
you got to love being out here right now. You got to love it. And he was just constantly. It was contagious. And
Yeah.
so you got to understand. By the time I was there, I had been through 80 coaches. My defensive line coach was Ed Ogeron, was the LSU head coach. When they won the championship under Joe Burrow.
Mhm.
He's a psycho. It's probably maybe one of the worst humans ever been around as a person. He's just a really bad human. And I'm not going to get in the nuances why, because they'll find where I live and murder me. But Pete Carroll, I remember it was like February. And the thing about February, you're in season shape. And then when you start training again, like late January, early February, it's the worst because it's a lot of cardio. And it was raining that day. We had to go to the gym where, they usually set up stations and they have all these trash cans set up because everybody's going to throw up. And there was this list on the wall, and it was all list of 3. And I'm like, oh, those are the teams of 3 of the stations. They're going to have 80 stations and 3 people. And it was a timed double elimination basketball tournament, right? And it was this fun, energetic, competitive, workout, and it was a good team building thing. But somehow, like, our backup tight end, one of our defensive backs, and our backup running back, like, was literally all on the same team. 72. This guy's 72. I can tell you exactly who's 7. Now I know Peter B's. I'm just going to go Peter B 72 and we chase the count.
No, everybody can hack into like.
I'm just going to find out the name of his dog and put an exclamation point after the 72. There you go, Peter B. So Pete Carroll separated with the teams of 3, double elimination. Somehow, like 3 guys that were all state basketball players ended up on the same team. Were killing everybody, like windmill 360 dunks, crazy.
Yeah.
And Pete Carroll comes up with our running back coach, who's 280, and our offensive line coach, who's like 400 pounds. Like Troy Polamalu's uncle was the running back coach. And he's like, how about your 3 best guys against me and my guys? And we're like, okay, like he's going to show humility and get beat in front of us. And that is not what happened. Now, granted, these guys have been playing for an hour. These guys were somewhat fresh, but it wasn't like they kind of won. Pete Carroll and these 2 other dudes beat these guys 11-2, and Pete Carroll was draining. He drained like 6 out of 7 like shots from the 3-point line, counting as 1 too.
Yeah.
He's draining threes. He's 6 for 7. Like the whole team's looking at him. They're running picks with the 400-pound dudes, and it was this like moment where I got to tell you, it's like out of a movie. Like Goldie Hawn and Wildcats, remember she outran the team?
Yeah.
It was like that, right? Yeah. Where you just had this further, deeper respect for somebody. that was a real athlete, and I love that moment, that experience, and all of a sudden everybody was committed.
Hmm.
And after I left, they won a bunch of championships. So I was technically the jinx in the system, but I got to start for one of the greatest coaches in the history of college football. So
So were you there during, like, was that Matt Leinart or like Barkley days?
So Barkley, so Matt Leinart, so there was Matt Leinart, and then there was another guy, and then there was Matt Barkley. I think
Yeah,
there was two other guys in between. Matt Leinart was there when I was
yeah,
there, and he wasn't a starter. He was thinking about transferring because he wasn't playing. But Carson
yeah.
Palmer was the starter. I played on the defense with Troy Polamalu.
Oh,
Matt Barkley, actually. So I made a documentary called "The Business of Amateurs." If anyone wants to check it out, it's free on
oh,
Amazon Prime. And we took on the NCAA, and we actually changed the law. So I'm on the oversight committee for a nonprofit, the National Collegiate Players Association, that oversees college athletes' rights. And we created a bill in California.
you're part of the NIL.
We were part of the zeitgeist and changing everything. Yeah. So I'm on the oversight committee that passed the bill in California, got replicated in 12 states, and then we got in front of the Supreme Court last year. And now athletes can make money from their name, image, and likeness. My documentary focuses on the money to show the disparity in the gap, but it shows really the academic integrity of the system. Guys are forced into
Yeah,
majors. It's about eligibility. It's not about getting a degree. And
yeah,
also CTE, guys are giving up their long-term mental health for the sake of this um, you know,
yeah,
this glory that's very temporary. So it's about all the inarguable things, but we use 5 minutes of the film to sell this bill up the food chain. So yeah, the film played a role in what we
I-
call the zeitgeist in the movement.
is that like on Amazon or
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
it's free on Amazon Prime. So
Oh, it is, okay, all right,
anyone
I'll,
wants to
I'll,
check it
I'll
out, and
yeah,
money from that film goes to nonprofits that support college athletes' rights.
awesome. I'll definitely check it
Um,
out.
but yeah, I mean that's the nice thing about what we can do with production. Having a filmmaking background helps us in all the content that we create all the time.
Definitely.
So I've always wanted to make commercials, and now I get to like do that. So that's really cool too.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. You got a lot going on. I mean, you've been a big part of things. You continue to be a big part of things, and now you've got Blind Barrels, and I mean, you got a lot going on, and a lot of great things. It sounds like. So, I mean, kudos to you.
Thank you. I mean, it's an extension if you look at it. Like we were standing up for college athletes that were really didn't have a voice in the system, and now we're doing the same thing with distilleries within the spirits world. And so it's a very similar element in terms of just
Yeah,
having an ethos in the way that you're approaching any kind of a brand, right?
yeah. Let me ask you this. So before we wrap it up, I'll let you tell people where they can find you. Let me pull up one other thing here. I'll add this. So if anybody wants to, they can go to blindbarrels.com. That's correct, right?
Yep, that's
Okay.
correct.
You can go there. You can subscribe. You can it's single, quarterly, yearly membership, all kinds of things. I'll let you explain that a little bit more.
Yeah, so if you want to get a gift and it's a one-off gift, then obviously there's a one-off box. Obviously, there's shipping discounts and all these other things that take place. So quarterly, yes, it's seasonal. So mid-March, June, September, and December, everybody gets the same box at the same time. Annual, you're basically prepaying for 4 shipments, and that's why you're paying $50 a box instead of 60.
Yeah.
And yeah, only our members can really order full barrels. And yeah, Whiskey 10, you're going to get a discount for merchandise, for bottle orders, for anything. If you want to give somebody a subscription gift, one of the things that you can do, you could buy somebody an annual gift and then cancel it, or you can get a gift card, send it to them, let them utilize it and put their own address in and control their subscription and things like that. So there's lots of ways to do it. But at the end of the day, we appreciate really the support. I mean, thank you, Scott, for just
Yeah.
having us on, and the support of the whiskey community, and really we're trying to bridge that gap between our subscribers, the consumers, and the distillers, and really disrupt distribution and let people try things they'd never be able to try. This is stuff that you can't get at your local liquor store. That's the coolest thing about it, and being able to get it for the same price. I honestly think that's the best. I would be in if I didn't create this, I would be in this for the sake of just being able to buy things for the same price at the distillery. That's
I think it's a great idea. I love the exposure that you give to other brands where there's not mass marketing, there's just not huge distribution. I mean, this, I don't know. I love this kind of like, business plan. And I love it from the standpoint of it really exposes a lot of other really good whiskeys that people wouldn't have an opportunity to try. And it was where I kind of got my start. So, I mean, for me, it's a cool thing to see people focusing on a little bit more of the craft side of things and allowing people to really try some other things that are just not readily available. So again, kudos to you guys in exposing a lot of these brands to a lot of people. So
thank you, Scott, and thank you for being supportive of our brand and really what we're doing. And once again, it's that part of the Venn diagram where even when we were trying to help athletes and people thought it was a liberal or a conservative issue, it's like, no, it's actually very capitalist to want to get your fair market value.
Sure.
And it was unanimous throughout, whether it was the Supreme Court at the state level or wherever it was unanimous. It was bipartisan. And this is also part of that. We're in this very divisive time right now, and supporting small American businesses is, I think, something that everybody can agree on. Right.
You got it. Well, thanks for all of this tonight. Thanks for sharing your stories, your experience. Thanks for sharing what it is that Blind Barrels is bringing. I would encourage anybody who has like any thought about doing this, go do it. Like, this is a really neat, fun thing. And again, I harp on the fact that it's whiskeys that not a lot of people have an opportunity to try outside of their local markets. And that's, for me, there's a soft spot for me in that part of it. So I love the idea that you guys are focusing on this and bringing the attention to a lot of local places and allowing them to kind of expand the horizon. So thanks for doing all of that. Thanks for putting together a great company. Thanks for coming on tonight. More importantly, thanks for sharing all of everything about you, Blind Barrels, all of that. Everybody, thank you so much for joining tonight. All the links are in the chat. I've got it linked below. So if you want to go check out blindbarrels.com, all of that will be there for you. If you have any other questions, you can always send something to the robot. He said he will respond to you by 2:30 or 3:30 in the morning.
I'll get back to you. And thank you guys. Yeah, maybe we can do this next quarter. And
anytime. I mean, I think doing the exposure.
When you guys hear about the June lineup, you're gonna be like, damn it, I didn't get on. And then when you hear September, I got to tell you, every lineup is getting crazier.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, I think
this wasn't badass, but I'm just telling you that every single
I loved it.
Now that we're building some steam, we got some momentum. We love that we get to just talk and showcase all these brands. And,
yeah, I mean, we could do this like all night long. I mean, I could talk about this stuff like all night long, and it's incredible. So yeah, if you're down for doing this stuff, whatever, every 3 months or something, and talking about the flight and just having a good old time, I'm totally down for doing that. So
we'll pop on, and then we got to see some Middle West in the backdrop and some.
we could probably incorporate some of that stuff for sure.
Yeah. Although I do love all those brands in your backdrop. So
yeah, a lot of this, I mean, it's all stuff that I drink. I've got a few. I
love Old Carter,
Old Carter, another favorite of mine, Barrel King. They're doing some great things. Sagamore's doing. I mean, whatever. Anyway, so
awesome. I love your setup. Yeah. So thanks again, Scott. I love this.
Appreciate it. Appreciate you coming on.
Tuning in, taking the time. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate you coming on tonight. Everybody, thanks. Congrats to Michelle Martin. You're going to get, if you choose this one, this will be really fun. You can send something to Bobby if you want a different one. He can get you set up that way. But guys, thanks again. I appreciate you all sticking with me for almost 2 hours. Crazy how a couple hours flies by, but appreciate you guys joining tonight. We'll be back. I think next Tuesday. I don't know what I've got. I've got a lot going on here in the next few weeks. So appreciate everybody joining tonight. Thank you for everybody for all the birthday wishes, all that. Greatly appreciate it. Love you guys. We'll see you next Tuesday. Bobby, thanks for joining. Stay tight, hang tight for a second. And guys, we'll see you We'll see you next Tuesday. Cheers.